Now, I want to talk on how enemies and problems are really tackled in politics, and this is for Mr. President and the governors. Now, as a sitting president or a governor or a political power holder of such magnitude, you must know that in politics, it is right to tackle enemies, but it is both right and wise to tackle a major problem first before enemies. In other words, it is better to tackle problems than it is right to tackle enemies. I shall be telling you how to identify a problem that is often the major problem and how it is tackled in the world of superior politics. This also means you should tackle the kind of problems you should tackle first, and then it will not only be easy for you to tackle enemies, but enemies will on their own flee. It is the only form of being masterful in politics and governance that get enemies and problems overcome. As the president or governor, when you are tackling enemies before problems, there is a likelihood that problems will increase in a way that is unfathomable to you. When you focus on tackling enemies rather than problems, then you will most likely get more problems. And I mean more problematic situations accumulating and cropping up in an unfathomable way, and which often manifest in the most troublesome and threatening way. Now one might ask, what if the enemy is the problem? My response will be that enemies don't often create or start a major problem just like that. Rather, they feed on a major problem or problems. This does not matter whether they know that they are feeding on such major problems or not. But it is a fault from which other serious problems will inevitably occur. It is one of the consequences or ironies of an individual's deficiencies or faults. In other words, enemies exist in any endeavor or involvement of a man most often because of the man's main individual shortcomings in such involvement. This ultimately implies that until a man is able to identify and mastery over his main shortcomings or deficiencies in such area of his involvement, enemies will continue to exist and exist even in the most disastrous, unfathomable way against the man. It is like a proverb from the western part of Nigeria that says if a major problem holds you down, every other problem, whether big or small, can climb on you. And that is why one of the major objectives of Kizwe Political Nugget is to teach the secrets that gives you or instills in you the abilities to identify major problems and how to ultimately mastery over them. This is for political power holders and political power seekers alike, though this package is specially for Mr. President and the governors. In practical politics, lack of political skills are deficiencies that attract enemies, while also feeding existing enemies to grow. In other words, weakness or deficiencies breed enemies, while also feeding existing enemies to grow. It is crucial to understand that when there are no such deficiencies, which often warrant or necessitate either the existence or persistence of major problems, then main enemies often either remain frustrated or remain subjugated. Enemies don't often create or start a major problem or problems just like that. But the first problem, which is one's weakness, becomes the advantage of the enemy over a person. This is notwithstanding whether your enemy is able to identify your weakness or not. That is, your weakness or deficiencies to a certain point are automatically the trap that exposes you. They are the factors that make you to be beatable and defeatable at any time, particularly when you cannot truly identify such deficiencies and mastery over them, as it is often required by nature, and particularly that is what is required in politics. Your deficiencies automatically work for your enemies, and the wise and discerning enemy will take advantage of it. The implication here is therefore that in politics, it is a terrible and disastrous thing to fight an intelligent enemy who can discern your weakness. That is to say, such enemy shall be able to conquer you, bring you down, or destroy you. Now let's look at it in the biblical perspective, particularly in the story of the devil deceiving Eve. Wise men have come to see that it was because Eve was weak, and women, naturally, like the Bible puts it, are weaker verses in certain ways of thinking. And that was why the devil was able to deceive Eve. And please note that the devil never literally deceived Adam, but Eve. Though logically or technically, one would say he deceived the couple, which was as a result of the outcome of such deception on Eve. Now imagine if the woman, Eve, had objectively argued with the devil rather than just accepting all the enticing things he told her about the forbidden fruit, which to her were desirable things. But that argument was not possible because Eve never realized her weakness or weaknesses. Neither was she wise enough to tell the devil to tell the man to eat the fruit first, since he was in the garden before she was created. Well, that is just in a biblical perspective. Now, the point here is that the wise and discerning enemy will always take advantage of your weakness. Enemies don't create problems just like that, and neither do problems crop up just like that until your weakness or deficiencies are widely understood by you and mastery over by you. Enemies will increase, and most times in an unfathomable way and with an incomprehensible strength against you. This can also happen in your efforts to progress or gain more progress beyond your present state. Knowing yourself in an intelligent way before knowing your enemy or enemies in an intelligent way is therefore strongly recommended in politics. And this in all and all is in accordance with modern politics, which is all about politics of intelligence. And it is all it takes to be truly superior to your enemies and be excellent in politics and leadership. Knowing yourself in this context is simply all about knowing your weaknesses and your true strengths. In Christianity or spiritual world, even the righteous cannot escape being vulnerable or liable to destruction for what he fails to know, most often due to his ignorance or weakness. Hence, it is written, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." The righteous has no escape when the foundation is faulty until it is fixed. And that's why the entire essence and aim of God's word is to teach knowledge for humans to be saved. Now, that is an example using the intangible and spiritual things. Now, in the physical world, until the problems that actually cause problems or make you faulty and mastery over by you, problems will be impossible to surmount. Even if sometimes you seem to be progressing, something evil might just be accumulating, and they are bound to grow in twist and turn. This is notwithstanding your level of achievement. So it is in politics. When a sitting president or an incumbent governor or a political power holder fails to comprehend his grave political weakness or ignorance and fails to study as he should to be better off, then he will always fail to comprehend what actually causes problems. In most cases, especially whenever his administration or political lifestyle is troubled, in the true sense of being troubled, just because he fails to study or learn as his job or pursuit actually requires him as the president or governor, a cause from which an administration or ambition of an incumbent often suffers more problem than the incumbent can imagine. Now, as a political power holder, particularly as the president or a governor, there is nothing wrong in identifying or knowing your enemies. In fact, it is always right to do so. Nevertheless, it is always better, safe, wise, and profitable to know yourself intelligently before knowing the enemies. Now, it is funny to sound this way, because one might ask, who is that political power holder that does not know himself or herself? But I tell you, the problem has always been beyond what some political power holders can comprehend as either the president or a governor. For knowing yourself include knowing that you possess or lack certain necessary virtues and attributes which are often compulsory or urgent for the president or a governor to possess. And these include every understanding that is like a crying need for a president or a governor that lacks it. Such understanding is often like a special meal meant for the president or governor, as the case may be. Little wonder, the Bible says, "Woe to you, O people, when your king is a child and your princes eat in the morning." It will take the president and those working for him the real skill to solve or comprehend real problems. Now, according to a paraphrase words of Niccolo Machiavelli, I quote, "For this cause, he who has mandate or seeks power or seeks to keep or wield power ought to have no any other aim or thought, nor select anything else for his study than the understanding and character which such power requires and conveys, its rules and discipline." End of quote. Now, make no mistake about what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a virtue that is far different and superior to any report or information that is often given to the president or a governor in the most exclusive manner. Now, knowing yourself also include being sound in knowing that you don't know when you actually don't know and that you need to know. It is like what Niccolo Machiavelli, the father of modern politics, said, and I quote, "There are three classes of intellect. There is one which comprehends by itself. There is another which appreciates what others comprehend. And there is the third, which neither comprehend by itself nor by the showing of others. The first is most excellent, the second is good, and the third is useless." End of quote. Now, this brings me to a crucial point I would like to make, and which is this. If Mr. President, the President of Nigeria, and the governors are not learning or studying as they ought to, which is as it is demanded of them, given their highly placed jobs or offices, then I would assert that they have failed and they will always fail. For their prime error and irresponsibility will be that they may have unwittingly or unknowingly ignored or neglected the required understanding and wisdom in politics and leadership. It is said in modern politics that a sign of intelligence is in the awareness of one's own ignorance. You must know yourself before knowing your enemy. This also means you must know your weakness and strength before knowing that of your enemy. Otherwise, your struggle and fight will amount to self-injury and self-deception or delusion. Your entire struggle in politics will be full of ignorance in your own disadvantage. You will be running the race disastrously blind and so wrong. If your focus as an incumbent is on identifying enemies first instead of problems first, it is in the diligent effort to identify problems as an incumbent that you actually discovered what can be the albatross to your vision or struggle. For instance, you cannot comprehend or identify real enemies and real problems through hate speech. Now, don't get it twisted, lest you misunderstood me. The major point here is know yourself sincerely before knowing your enemy or enemies. When you don't know your weakness or weaknesses and strengths before pursuing or attacking perceived enemies, it amounts to grave error which alone is capable of totally bringing your downfall. It is therefore seriously required of an incumbent president to let the wise men know that telling him the truth will not offend him. In the paraphrased word of Machiavelli, I quote, "There is no other way to guard yourself against flattery than by making men understand that telling you the truth will not offend you." End of quote. And telling you the truth here includes letting you know your deficiencies, your faulty actions and inactions. And which should also include your advantages and commendable attributes. I urge every wisdom-loving incumbent president or governor to take heed in this nugget, and I mean every incumbent that is a lover of wisdom should internalize this nugget as an article of faith.
Yes, boss. Niger, president in 4 years. President in 4 years, no shaking. I've got the formula, yes.